Well, howdy there, stranger. I'm Jordy,
And I'm Brad.
and welcome back to Beers with Queers, the true crime podcast where I research a case, and Brad here, and potentially you guys.
Don't know a damn thing about it. Except this week, I do. That's right, it's a Brad episode. And I'm sticking with our spooky season theme. And I have a case for you that sounds more like a horror movie than a true crime case. In fact, it was actually made into a horror movie. Which, at the end of this episode, I'm going to test Jordy's extensive knowledge of horror movies and see if he can guess which one it is.
Ooh, a challenge. I'm always up for a challenge, and not to toot my own horn, but horror movies are my forte.
They are his forte.
So, all right, I'm ready to see what spooky thing Brad has in store for us. Yes, we are well underway with spooky season. It's going to be a fun-filled month of haunted houses, horror movies, and just all things creepy, spooky, and fall. I'm here for it. I think it's going to be a really good Halloween.
It is. It's going to be jam-packed with stuff to do. This weekend, we're actually doing our Pumpkinheads tradition, which is where all of our friends get together. We hang out for the day, carving pumpkins together. And this year, it's going to be a tea party along with the pumpkin carving. And then afterwards, we cut the bottoms out of the pumpkins, take them downtown, put them on our heads, and go around town spreading a little bit of holiday cheer.
Yeah, so it's just like it sounds. We are going to be putting real pumpkins on our heads. And something we get asked every single year, and I'm still not quite sure yet, is everyone will always go, I bet that smelled so bad, or did it reek? And I'm always like, no, we've been doing it 6 years in a row, and it's never smelled bad. It smells like a pumpkin, which smells good. So I don't know what that's about. Do
I was
pumpkins
actually
smell-
going to say the pumpkins do not smell bad. I was going to say it if you didn't, because that's the first thing. Everybody crinkles up their nose and goes, "Oh, I bet that stinks so bad." And I'm like, actually, it doesn't. It kind of smells pleasant. I think maybe after a pumpkin's set out for a few days and it's turned into a jack-o'-lantern, it might actually start smelling. But for the most part, kind of smells good.
Yeah, I mean, it really smells. It doesn't smell bad. It will leave your hair matted and sticky. So that's the biggest hurdle to get over, but it's worth it for the fun, all the looks, all the photos. And yeah, I'm really excited. I actually completely forgot until he mentioned that we are doing that this Sunday. So one, we got to get pumpkins, and then two, I got to find an outfit. So, uh,
Yes, that's a very important too, because whatever your pumpkin you're going to carve, you have to have an outfit to go with it, because we do go downtown, we take pictures, and we all get together, and it's kind of cool because we've been doing it since the pandemic times, and now it's kind of like people expect us, and they come out and we meet a lot of people, and we've actually recruited some people into the Pumpkinhead tradition. So it's really cool to see it kind of blossom.
it is. So that's going to be fun. And then Saturday, I think we're going to be filming a little horror short in a cave, and then we're going.
Mines, we are going to be in mines that used to be for prisoners. So that's going to be very interesting. So if you don't hear from us, you need to go and say, check the mines around Tennessee there. That's where you'll find them.
Yeah, we're probably trapped inside of a mine, and we'll probably never be found, which is exactly how I want to go.
Yeah. And also, one of our friends who is a drag queen extraordinaire was actually the first drag queen I ever saw. And so you never forget your first drag queen. The one and only Mercedes Alexander has asked us to help her film a little short for a pageant that she's going to be in. And so, of course, we said yes. And so we're going to also be doing that this weekend. So crazy enough, this is our least busy weekend, and that's all the stuff we're doing this weekend.
On top of then, I think after Saturday, after we go film the little horror short, we're going to go to some haunted houses, and then we're going to come back and watch some scary movies. So it's going to be a really extra spooky weekend.
Well,
And I'm
actually, we also tomorrow night have horror trivia to go to, where, like I said, Jordy is like a secret weapon when it comes to horror trivia.
Yeah, that's my superpower, my little hidden superpower. Again, not to toot my own horn. But yeah, I want to go there tomorrow, whip their asses, and then leave just to prove something to myself because, I couldn't be born with a good skill like math or, math, essentially. Math is my kryptonite. I had to be born with the ability to memorize word for word every horror movie released between 1972 and 1985. And you know what?
He's
I'll
being
take
very kind on that too, because ask him anything about old Hollywood movies, and he can tell you the actor, actresses that are in it, whatever awards they won. He can tell you all the trivia from them. It is absolutely astounding, the stuff that he remembers about movies. It blows my mind all the time. And I can't even remember to take my lunch to work in the morning. And half the time I don't even know where my keys are. And so it always blows my mind, Jordy's ability to remember stuff. Not important stuff. Depends on what you consider important. Not important stuff, but he can remember anything about movies.
which is important to me most of the time. So, yeah, I got that going for me at least in this world. Not much else other than that in terms of useful skills. But you know what? It comes in really good use in October. And apparently, I have really good luck with Hunger Games because we also just played the Dragon Con Marriott Hunger Games yesterday, and I've never felt more valued than yesterday. So essentially, I don't know if a lot of people know, Dragon Con, you can't just book the room at any given day of the week. You have 100,000 other people trying to book the exact same thing, the exact same rooms. There's like 1,600 total in the Marriott, which is the hub of Dragon Con. That's where everyone wants to be. And so you have all those people trying to book at once. And so the Marriott has it booked off specifically at a certain point, which was yesterday at 10 a.m. That is when you can start booking.
Think about this. That's almost a year before Dragon Con even happens. That's how far back they have to prepare for this.
Yeah, because when I say it starts at 10, it's over by 10:05. All the rooms are gone. And the way it works is you're in a randomized queue. So when that queue opens, it doesn't matter if you get there an hour before or 30 seconds before, you get a random number and that is just your place in line. So if the cosplay gods are looking down on you that day, you get it. If not, you don't. And so we had a group of, I think, 8 people this year lined up, ready to try and get as many rooms as we can for each other. It was
We had multiple laptops open, phones, people on the phones, people on the apps. And between all of us, we managed to get 4 rooms, which covers our group. 2 of them was by Jordy. He was the absolute hero of the day. I was not. I put into that queue and I was number 52,000 and something.
Yeah, so I tried it with 3 laptops. The first one that popped up, I was 14,000th in queue with the hour plus wait time. I was like, all right, well, that one's done. And then I was 400th in the other one. And then finally my iPad loaded and I was number 30 in queue. And so I managed to get rooms for the majority of our people. And yeah, I never felt more valued than when I got to go into the chat and everyone was like, I didn't get anything. I didn't get anything. And I was like, I got 2. And so that was the highlight of my week. And I'm going to be riding that high probably till next Dragon Con. So yeah, apparently I have good luck with that was my first year doing it, like officially. So apparently I have good luck with that.
I did not have good luck. I basically was like Mario because I was trying to use the phone and call places, and I would get someone on the line and they're like, sorry, you can't book here. The number is in another castle. And so then I would call that number, and no joke, 3 different numbers they gave me to call, and none of them would take an actual booking. And finally, the last number I got was to the fax machine, because when I called it, it made the fax machine noise. And I was like, I'm done. 5 minutes, and everything around DragonCon, the Marriott, is sold out. Booked solid. So thank you, Jordy. You saved us this year. So DragonCon 2026 is on.
Yeah, so feel comfortable knowing that's secure. We're going to be back in the Marriott. So next year's already off to a good start. And with that, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. I know that's why y'all came here and you're sick of hearing us yap, probably. So I'm ready to see what Brad has in store for us, and I'm ready to see if I can figure out what this movie is before the end of the episode. So I'm gonna be extra keen on details here.
I'm just going to start out by saying this one is extremely dark, but I have left out the grotesque details. So even if you're a little bit squeamish, you can come along for this ride because you don't want to miss it. It's definitely a spooky season case. And it begins in the sweltering borderlands between Texas and Mexico. A cult was quietly feeding on fear and flesh, led by a charismatic man who called himself a sorcerer. They mixed drug trafficking with dark rituals, claiming human lives as offerings to their gods. When police stumbled onto a remote ranch littered with bones and a sacrificial cauldron, they uncovered something beyond even the drug cartel's brutality, something that blurred the line between crime, religion, and madness. This is the story of Adolfo de Jesús Constanzo and the Narcosatánicos. Adolfo de Jesús Constanzo was born November 1st, 1962, in Miami, Florida. His mother was just 15 at the time. They were Cuban, poor, but determined to survive. Faith filled their home, crosses on the walls, rosaries tucked into drawers, but so did something older. The smell of smoke, the sound of chants, and the shadow of rituals carried from Havana to Florida. He was baptized Catholic, served as an altar boy, but his mother taught him other prayers, ones whispered to the spirits, not the saints. When he was still a boy, they left Miami for Puerto Rico. The island was alive with religion, Catholic churches on every corner, but also voodoo, Santeria, and Palo Mayombe, an Afro-Caribbean religion that originated in Central Africa, rooted in the spiritual traditions of the Congo people. It took shape in Cuba during the colonial era when enslaved Africans blended their ancestral beliefs with elements of Catholicism and local folklore. At its core, Palo Mayombe centers on the worship of powerful spirits known as mapungos, who are connected to nature and the dead. Practitioners called palero or palera work through sacred cauldrons known as ngangas, which are iron pots filled with soil, sticks, bones, and ritual objects believed to house these spirits. Each nganda becomes a living vessel of energy and communication between the material and the spiritual worlds. Unlike Santeria, which focuses on divine orishas, Palo Mayombe's emphasis is on ancestral and earthly forces that are raw, direct, and often feared for their association with bringing both healing and harm. To Adolfo, this magic was everywhere, and he not only saw but understood that power wasn't always something holy or even good. Sometimes it was bought for the wrong reasons, and sometimes it was something to be feared. By the early 70s, they were back in Miami. The move didn't make life easier, though. His stepfather died young. His mother remarried a man who mixed faith with crime. He ran scams, performed rituals, and he showed Adolfo how he could blur the two. In Little Havana, that line blurred even more. Catholic shrines sat beside storefront botanicas. Candles burned for luck, for money, and even for revenge. People said Adolfo watched it all, that he learned what power looked like when people were desperate for it. As a teenager, he was restless, charming, quick to smile. He didn't care for the rules or school. He spent his nights in the city's gay bars, places where men met in the shadows, where being seen could still ruin a life. He was bold, beautiful, and unafraid to use both. Lovers said he carried an aura of something magnetic, but something dark. He read tarot cards, spoke of protection, and promised things people wanted to believe in. By his late teens, he called himself a priest, a padrino. He performed rituals for clients, cleansings, blessings, curses undone, and all for a price, of course. Some said he could stop bullets. Others said he could make you disappear completely. And the more they believed, the stronger he became. His queerness wasn't separate from him either, especially back in this time. That's strange. We're talking the 80s here. It was part of his power. Desire mixed with faith, seduction with control. To follow him meant surrendering to devotion only to him and to something dark and unseen. By 1983, he left Miami behind and moved to Mexico City. He told friends that he was chasing opportunity, but it was more than that. Mexico promised anonymity and access. In the capital, mysticism and corruption existed side by side. Money flowed fast, so did fear, and fear to Adolfo meant opportunity. He set up a shop in Zona Rosa, a neighborhood pulsing with nightlife, queer culture, and vice. There, he built a new congregation, clients, lovers, and followers, people who believed that he could make them untouchable. There, he built his Naganda, that ritual cauldron that I talked about earlier, and filled it with sticks, bones, and blood. He said it held a spirit named Kadiampimbe, the spirit of power and protection. And his followers swore it worked. They said he could predict raids, vanish from sight, and turn enemies into allies. Word of his power began to spread, and this brought him even more clients, more wealth, and more power. The line between faith and crime slowly dissolved, and Adolfo stepped right through it. By the mid-1980s, Adolfo Constanzo had built something more than a following. He had built a hierarchy. At the top was him, El Padrino, the Godfather. Below him were his disciples, all bound by ritual, loyalty, and fear. They believed he could make them invisible to bullets, that his magic could shield them from death itself, and that his favor meant fortune. It wasn't long before he drew in Mexico City's elite, models, musicians, police officers, traffickers. They came for readings and for protection, for his luck that he could give them. Many stayed because they believed. Others stayed because they were afraid to leave. His clients weren't just desperate people anymore. They had money and influence, and in turn, this brought Adolfo money and influence, and more. More and more people flocked to him because if the elite sought out his protections and power, his magic must actually work. And who needs more protections and luck than people doing stuff that was illegal? People like drug lords and smugglers. Adolfo promised his rituals could bless shipments, blind authorities, and curse anyone who crossed them. For cartels looking for an edge, he was irresistible. And Adolfo's charm sealed it. He was confident, magnetic, and commanding. He was also queer and unapologetic in a world that punished both difference and dominance. His sexuality made him dangerous to men who wanted power and feared desire. But Adolfo turned that fear into control. He used seduction as a weapon and obedience as worship.
And I mean, for being openly queer and unapologetic in the 1980s, I'm not sure. I'm not really looked into how it was in Mexico City, but I have to believe it wasn't quote unquote normal to be
It was
openly queer like that. And so to be that, but also can see from the point where you see yourself as untouchable and so powerful, that, yeah, what are they gonna do? You're the guy everyone comes to, so or they're gonna say something about you being gay. So I mean, I get it. It's
That's the thing, I hate to say it this way, but there's a lot of times I'm not really as afraid of going somewhere and someone knowing I'm gay and everything because I'm like, I'm gonna throw fists if something goes down, so I'm not as scared as some other people might be, and Adolfo really did believe in what he was doing, like, he believed that he had powers and that he was basically untouchable. So he's like, yeah, say something. Say something and see what happens. And the thing is, the people around him believed he had that power as well. So they're not going to say anything. They want to be on Adolfo's good side. Literally, they think he can stop bullets and disappear pretty much at will. So you're not going to mess with somebody like that.
no, I mean, I wouldn't mess with someone like that if they could stop bullets, which I'm surprised no one, tested that out. But take him for his word for it, I guess.
Sarah Aldrete entered his world in 1987. She was a college student, tall, smart, Catholic, and curious about the occult. And Adolfo saw potential. She became La Madrina, the godmother. To the outsiders, she was a follower. To the insiders, she was a high priestess. Together, they drew in others. Some were gay men he'd met through Mexico City's nightlife. Some were his lovers. Some were dealers who believed they were untouchable with Adolfo's blessings.
I don't think the title of high priestess is something you can just hand out. I feel like that's something that's earned and worked towards for like many years. But I mean, I guess, if you start your own cult, you can do whatever you want and just pull in someone random from the street and be like, you are now a high priestess.
Again, who is going to tell him no?
But yeah, who's going to tell him no? I can stop bullets and disappear into thin air. So yeah, watch yourself around me.
And it's around this time in private the rituals started to turn darker. He taught them that Palo Mayombe demanded sacrifice. That power required blood. First animals, and then humans. And the spirit in the cauldron had to be fed. And it was always hungry. His Naganda was filled with sticks, coins, skulls, and blood. He told his followers it spoke to him, that when the Naganda was pleased, it protected them. When it hungered, their job was to feed it more victims. The group moved north to Matamoros near the U.S. border, a place where drug money flowed freely and violence was easy to hide. There, Adolfo's rituals fused completely with cartel business. Before a shipment went out, he performed a ceremony. Before a rival was killed, he offered a prayer. He told them the Naganda needed human parts to stay powerful: brains, hearts, and spines. He said it would make their enemies weak, their own hands strong, and they all believed him. This wasn't faith anymore. It was a system, a cycle of fear feeding greed. And inside the cult, Adolfo's word was law. Disobedience meant punishment, and doubt meant death. His queerness, once a quiet undercurrent, became a tool of dominance. He chose lovers from his followers, gay or straight, demanded submission as a sign of devotion. For some, it blurred the line between desire and terror. For others, it was worship. The cult believed that they were chosen, soldiers of a sacred war that no one else could see. And that's cult life for you right there. When you're in, you're in.
Yeah, and it's like a meme I always say where it's like, I'm not impressionable enough to be brainwashed into a cult, but I am nosy enough to join a cult. And it is wild to me. Like, I love cult documentaries and stuff, how people get wrapped up in this sort of thing to where they're, believing their cult leader can stop bullets and disappear and demands a human sacrifice. And it is always so funny how every time there's a cult leader, all of a sudden it's law that they take on multiple brides or husbands or lovers. I just love that that one aspect, of course, is the same all across the board, no matter what kind of cult you got.
Yeah, this is no different. Like, he had plenty of lovers. He was taking straight men as lovers because it was a way to worship Adolfo, was to be his lover, whether you were gay or not. If he liked you, he was going to have you. But outside Matamoros, rumors were spreading. Police began finding mutilated bodies in the countryside. Drug traffickers whispered about a man who prayed over blood and bones, and locals spoke of the screams in the night and the fires that burned long after the rituals ended. Adolfo called it sacrifice, but to the outside world, it was pure and simple murder. By 1988, the rituals had become routine, and every death fed his legend. Every body he fed to his cauldron strengthened his grip on everyone.
I love how just right out the gate, too, he murdered multiple people without question.
Oh, yeah. They were starting to kill people very quickly. But power built on fear can't last forever. Eventually, it always cracks. And that crack came in March of 1989, when an American student vanished on the border.
That's where you mess up. As soon as you start snatching them Americans off the street in a different country,
I hate to say it, but this is where he messed up. He snatched an American.
yeah, I mean, it's sad to say it like that, but I mean, that is the truth. That's unfortunately the world we live in. Turn a blind eye to all this, and then as soon as an American goes missing, especially if they're white, goes missing in a different country, and especially if they're young, then you are going to have the feds all over your ass, news, every station. It's no longer just, your rumors of people vanishing off the street. Now it's a full-on manhunt. All eyes are on you. Unfortunately, that's where you mess up when you start targeting the Americans in a different country.
So March 13th, 1989, spring break in South Texas. The streets of Brownsville were crowded with students heading to Matamoros. Just a quick trip across the border, and the drinks were cheap and the music was loud. Just the type of environment for spring breakers. Among them was a 21-year-old named Mark Kilroy, pre-med student, clean-cut, athletic, and he'd gone to Mexico with friends for a few nights of partying before finals. That night, they drank, danced, drifted between bars, and at around 2 a.m., the group split up in the crowd. Mark wandered toward the border crossing alone. Then, he was just gone. By morning, his friends were searching the streets, calling police, retracing their steps. There was no sign of him. His wallet, his passport, everything vanished without a trace. At first, police thought it was a typical disappearance. Spring break brought plenty of drunk tourists. Wrong turns, robberies. A lot of things can go wrong down there. But Mark's family refused to accept that. They knew something was wrong. Within days, the search went national. Posters went up. The U.S. consulate got involved. The FBI joined the Mexican authorities, and a reward was even offered. Just like Jordy said, exactly what happened.
And it's time and time again. It's okay until it's not. And then you get someone, you snatch someone from America or something like that. And like I said, also, especially when they're a young person, that only adds to it. So, yeah, it's beginning of the end.
Well, you need to add that they were a young person that was a college student and was a good victim profile for the Americans to get behind.
Pre-med, clean-cut, athletic, disappears in Mexico, American, like I said, literally all the hallmarks to this is someone the entire country can get behind their family. This is someone with their whole future ahead. It's sad to say. America is very bad about if they do not fit a very particular type.
I was going to say, if they're a prostitute or a person of color a lot of times,
Or a drug addict.
then they're like, well, they got what they deserved. And that's the American way.
It's very funny. You'll see like on Facebook, all the people that are very much like, I'm a Christian, I love everybody. And then underneath the same thing, it'll be like, well, it's bad what happened to them, but, they shouldn't have been out as a sex worker. They brought this on themselves. And it's like that. That is a very backwards way of thinking, Ethel, but
But weeks passed with no answers. Then, by chance, everything changed. In early April, Mexican police stopped a pickup truck near Matamoros. Inside, they found marijuana. Nothing unusual, but when they followed the truck driver back to a ranch outside of town, they found something else. Something right out of a horror movie. The ranch was called Rancho Santa Elena. It belonged to a family tied to drug smuggling, but what police uncovered there went far beyond trafficking. At the ranch, they found evidence of ritual sacrifice, blood, bones, candles, and a cauldron filled with what first looked like animal remains, but they weren't. As teams moved in to canvass the ranch, they began to find shallow graves containing human remains. At first, investigators thought there were just a few. Then they kept digging. 1, 2, 10. By the time they stopped, they'd found more than a dozen. And among them was Mark Kilroy. His body showed signs of ritual mutilation. His brain had been removed, his spine severed, and his heart was gone. The cauldron, Naganda, the center of Adolfo Costanzo's power, contained all of them. His bones, his blood, and his organs. For investigators, it was a horror beyond reason. For the cult, it was divine work. When the news broke, Mexico was stunned. And of course, the American media swarmed. The press called them Narcosatánicos, the narco-Satanists, a cult that blended witchcraft, drugs, and death. At the center of it all was Adolfo Constanzo, the self-proclaimed high priest, the man who promised invincibility and demanded blood. Police raided his Mexico City apartment. They found altars, ritual tools, money, and human bones, but not Adolfo. Adolfo had fled with Sarah Aldrete and several followers. Together, they disappeared into the chaos of Mexico City. The cult scattered, hiding among friends, safe houses, and hotels. He told them that they were being hunted, that the Naganda would still protect them, that death couldn't touch them if they stayed loyal. But panic was growing, and honestly, it's hard to take assurances from protection of a man that's on the run. So his followers began cracking under the pressure. Some were arrested, others talked, and the facade of supernatural power was collapsing under interrogation and headlines. For the first time, Adolfo's control was slipping. He had built a kingdom on terror, and now that same fear was coming for him. By late April 1989, Adolfo Costanzo was running out of places to hide. His followers were being picked up one by one. The story had made international news, and the police of Mexico City and Matamoros were coordinating raids. And the American press called him a devil, a monster. And for a time, Adolfo loved that attention. He cut his hair, he dyed it, and he moved between apartments, each one stocked with candles, bones, and small altars. His power, he told Sarah, wasn't gone. It was being tested. And if they stayed faithful, the spirits would still protect them. But his magic couldn't stop police checkpoints. Couldn't erase the faces of the dead splashed across newspapers. Couldn't keep his followers from talking when interrogations got a little too close to torture. His empire of fear was collapsing. By May, the group had holed up in an apartment near Insurgentes Avenue. They lived on the floor, curtains drawn, no phone, and no light except candles. Outside, police were closing in. A neighbor had reported strange noises, chanting, shouting, and banging. Officers traced the address surrounding the building and waited for backup. Inside, Adolfo refused to surrender. He told his followers the police couldn't touch them, that he would die before being taken alive. He handed his favorite follower, Martin Quintana, and when I say favorite follower, his lover as well, a gun, and told him to shoot when the time came. When police stormed the building, chaos broke out. Shouts, gunfire, and smoke. Adolfo screamed orders, and then he gave the final command. He ordered Martin to kill him. 2 shots, one for Adolfo and one for his lover, both dead before the police broke down the door. It was May 6th, 1989, and the hunt for Adolfo Constanzo, cult leader, drug trafficker, self-proclaimed sorcerer, was over. But what he left behind was harder to kill. The cult was finished, but the story wasn't.
So I guess all those, talk about being able to stop a bullet and disappear, I guess they were all lies, which is crazy. Talking all that big game and then taken out by a bullet, it writes itself and the irony is not lost.
At Rancho Santa Elena, investigators recovered dozens of bodies, men, women, and even children. Many were never identified. Some were believed to be rival traffickers, others unlucky travelers, and a few of them loyal followers who had begun to doubt. The case shook Mexico. It shattered the border's uneasy balance between crime and superstition. And it also exposed something deeper: how easily faith can be twisted into control. And also how queer identity, already demonized, could be weaponized by the press. In the days that followed, the press descended on Mexico City and Matamoros. Headlines screamed of satanic rituals, black magic, and witchcraft. News anchors used words like deviant, perverted, unnatural. They talked about his spells and his sacrifices, but what they really wanted to talk about was his sexuality. Headlines called Adolfo the homosexual Satanist. Reporters painted his queerness as proof of his evil. In a country shaped by machismo and Catholic guilt, Adolfo Constanzo became the perfect villain: gay, foreign-born, charismatic, and dangerous. How his story was portrayed turned queerness itself into a kind of curse. It was easier for the public to believe that the violence came from homosexual desire than from control, greed, or the hunger for power. It let people look away from what really made the cult possible: the corruption that ran through the drug trade, the police, and the church that refused to confront its own shadow. For Mexico's queer community, it was another wound. Gay bars were raided, patrons questioned, and the press printed rumors about satanic circles in the Zona Rosa, naming ordinary queer people as if they were conspirators. Fear spread, and with it, the sense that queerness went hand in hand with evil. Meanwhile, the families of the dead were left behind. The names and lives of the victims of Adolfo's rituals were just lost in all of this noise. Sarah Aldrete was captured alive. In 1994, she was sentenced to decades in prison. Behind bars, she gave interviews saying that she had been manipulated, brainwashed, and trapped by Adolfo's charm. Some believed her, others didn't. She spoke of nightmares that never stopped, of hearing his voice in the dark, still giving orders. In the years that followed, Rancho Santa Elena became a symbol, a cautionary tale, and reporters revisited it every few years, each time reshaping the story to fit the fears of the moment: drugs, cults, outsiders, or just the unknown. But underneath the horror, there's something else, a pattern that repeats itself. How societies project their own violence onto marginalized people. How queer men, especially those who wield power or break rules, are made into monsters, not just for the horrible things they do, but also for their sexuality. Adolfo Constanzo's life was a collision of faith and manipulation, of queerness and power used as a weapon. His crimes were his own, but the way the world reacted to him revealed something broader: a need to equate queerness with danger, and to punish visibility when it doesn't conform. Even now, his name carries myth. The Narcosatánicos became legend. Their story retold in documentaries, crime shows, and tabloids, and even the movie that Jordy's gonna guess here in a minute. But what often gets lost in the context is the poverty, the religious synchronism, the systematic corruption, and the wealth of the illegal drug trade is what really made his power possible. He didn't rise in a vacuum. He rose from a culture that believed in saints and sorcery, that feared queerness, and that worshiped control. He learned to turn that fear into power. And in the end, that same fear destroyed him. Adolfo Costanzo remains one of the most haunting figures in queer history, not just because of his truly horrific crimes, but also how his sexuality was used to define him and justify that evil. His actions became a mirror for society's anxieties and an easy way to disguise prejudice as moral panic, and a tool to feed the same old prejudice that queerness leads to darkness and corruption. But what was truly never said was his queerness was not what made him dangerous. Power did, control did, and fear did. And ultimately, a society that would rather look for an easy scapegoat than face the hard reality that a way of life that glorifies greed, power, and control over others is the real root of all evils. And that's kind of going on today, folks.
Yeah, it very much is going on today. I think this case covers quite a bit of, you know, people who are, there's bad people from all walks of life. We say that time and time again. There are horrible people in every community, and the same is true for the queer community. And, there's no shying away from that. I mean, like, that's just the truth. But you can also see where it's, less to do with the fact that they're queer that makes them evil cult leaders who torture, mutilate, and murder dozens of people. I think it has more to do with the fact that they are power hungry, manipulative, and love the control they have over people. Now,
Media loves when it's a queer person that does something wrong.
they do, and you'll also see if, that changes and maybe they're not a queer person, they'll kind of just brush that one under the rug. But if a story happens and it does turn out they're any form of any marginalized group, it is the biggest tragedy since whenever. And yeah, it's sad that, that's how the media works, but it's true. It goes back to how, a real thing, this is a real thing when we say it, missing white girl syndrome. So you can look at the statistics and see where cases involving young, pretty white girls that go missing in America are massively disproportionately more covered by news outlets than any other group, because those are the stories that get the most attention, just because that's the sadly the society we live in.
Okay, here's the big question of this. What horror movie is based off of this case?
So first, I do know this case. I remember this case, Mark Kilroy, and this was a really fascinating case. So I'm pretty sure I remember what movie this is based off of. So I'm gonna say, and hopefully I don't get it wrong. Otherwise, we're not gonna release this episode because I'm not about to talk all that game and get it wrong. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't it 2007's Borderland. Isn't that what it's called?
I knew he would get it. And for the rest of you guys who probably never heard of Borderland, here's the backstory.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had, I had it hidden in the script so that he couldn't see it. It was a page up. So I actually flipped a page up and now he can see the whole write-up I had about this movie.
That's really funny. So also I want to point out, like, as soon as he started the episode, this is how my brain works. And I mean, just I'm just that good. He started talking about Mexico City, and my brain immediately went, horror movie set in Mexico City. The only one that I can think of right off the top of my head is from 2007's Borderland. So that's my current guess. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's that one, but that's how my brain works. So it'll be like, name this movie from 1977 where so and so. My brain's immediately go, what movie's from 1977? Done. So yeah, I'm glad that I could hopefully wow you guys with my horror movie knowledge.
And here's the backstory of the movie. In the mid-2000s, Dimension Extreme launched a horror anthology series called 8 Films to Die For, also known as
The After Dark Horror Fest.
And each year, 8 independent horror films were released together under that label, marketed as so disturbing that they had been too shocking for a wide release. The films ranged from supernatural thrillers to gritty real-world horror, and they quickly gained a cult following among fans. And I was one of those fans of the After Dark Horror Fest, and I know Jordy is as well. I looked forward to them every year.
So yeah, I told him this actually. One of my fondest memories was, and dating myself here, the first one came out in 2006. I just started the 3rd grade, and yeah, I vividly remember my mother took me to the store, and I bought every single one of them because I used to be a big DVD person back then. Went home, and that weekend after school, I spent the whole weekend watching them back to back to back to back to back, eating pizza and popcorn in my room, and it is still one of the most fondest memories I have from my childhood. Yeah, and I love all of them. I look forward to them every year. So I'm very sad they stopped doing them because it was just such an event, and it was so there was a lot of trash, but there's also a lot of hidden gems in them.
There was some really good movies in the After Dark Horror Fest. Inside, the French version of it, is one of my favorite movies ever. That was an After Dark Horror Fest film.
That was Frontiers.
I thought Inside was also an After Dark. It was a Dimension Extreme.
It was After Dark Horror Fest.
Oh, never mind then. But going back to it, one of the standout entries for 2007 was the film Borderland, directed by Zev Berman and starring Sean Astin as a villain. A role you don't normally associate with Maki from the Goonies or Samwise Gamgee from The Lord of the Rings. But after seeing this movie, you won't ever forget it. He's bad in this movie. Unlike the supernatural fare of many of the other titles, Borderland was inspired by real events, namely the crimes of Adolfo de Jesús Constanzo and his followers, known as the Narcosatánicos. The film follows 3 American college friends who travel to a Mexican border town for a weekend of partying, only to be pulled into a nightmare involving drug cartels and ritual killings. Kind of a Hostel type movie.
I was about to say also 2007, this was the time of the torture porn genre was really popular because of Saw and Hostel, and then you had The Devil's Rejects come out at that time, and then Borderland, and then a bunch of other very obvious Saw knockoffs. One of the best ones, personally for me, was Torristas.
Torristas was an amazing movie.
I love Torristas, and ain't nobody tell me otherwise. I remember seeing that in theaters. It was really good, and it was pretty scary, the thought of, human organ trafficking. There's a bunch around that time, but also from the 2007 Horror Fest, I remember Borderland being one of the better ones. I've actually not seen it in a few years, and I actually wouldn't mind going back and watching it.
Yeah, after I finished this case, I was like, I'm going to watch Borderland again, but I can't watch it until after I do this episode.
Yeah, so that might be one of the scary movies we watched this weekend with everybody, that we have everybody over at the house, because, yeah, I remember it being really good and also being based on a true story. And actually, we'll probably go through and see if there's a few different Horror Fest movies that we can show people, because there's a bunch. There's the ones that I remember off the top of my head that are really good was The Grave Dancers. Dark Ride was a slasher movie set in an amusement park haunted house. What are the other ones? Wicked Little Things, I remember, is a good one. Unrest. I'm trying to think of the really good ones. There's a bunch, actually. We'll probably list them in the show notes or you can just Google After Dark Horror Fest, because there's like 4, I think.
4 years of it.
Yeah.
8 films each year.
Yeah, so 4 years of 8 films each. I don't know how many that is. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, my kryptonite is math. But you guys figured that out, and that will help you with your horror movie recommendations for, Halloween season.
And with that, that's the story of Adolfo de Jesús Constanzo.
Very well told. Very much in line with the spooky season. It doesn't get much more spooky than spirits and human ritualistic sacrifices. And with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. If you enjoyed this episode and the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating or review on iTunes or Spotify. Helps us out a lot. Helps other people discover the podcast. And of course, we just love hearing from you guys. If you want to see photos from today's case, you can follow us on Instagram at Beers with Queers Pod, that's POD, or on Facebook at Beers with Queers, a true crime podcast. And until next week, stay dangerous out there, my friends, and happy Halloween.
And stay spooky out there.
And stay spooky, the spookiest.